Hello everyone, back again with movie and tune recap. Today, I'm going to explain a New Zealand supernatural horror film from 2015, titled The Dead Room. Spoilers ahead, so watch out and take care. The movie opens in the dark abandoned basement of a house, filled with cobwebs and what appear to be bones. The scene then shifts to the beautiful countryside of New Zealand, where an insurance company hires 3 ghost hunters to investigate a reportedly haunted farmhouse that was mysteriously abandoned by the family who once lived there. The team consists of Liam, who manages the group's technological equipment, Scott, the skeptical team leader, and Holly, a psychic. Inside the farmhouse, Holly walks through the rooms, attempting to sense any supernatural presence, but detects nothing. Scott uses one of his instruments to measure electromagnetic activity, but finds no disturbances. Since the farmhouse has no electricity, the team will rely on a generator for the duration of their investigation. As they settle in, Holly cleans up the mess left behind in the house, Liam installs several sensor-equipped cameras, and Scott arranges his equipment. Later, while reading through a séance book, Holly briefly senses a strange presence but brushes it off. After setting up all their equipment, the crew sits down for a meal, during which they discuss the family who once lived in the farmhouse. According to Holly, the family was having dinner when they suddenly abandoned the house, leaving all of their belongings behind because of a ghostly presence. However, Scott offers his own theory, suggesting that low-frequency sound can create sensations that people mistake for paranormal activity. He speculates that the family may have been frightened by noisy pipes or another natural cause rather than ghosts. Liam then shows Holly footage of a chair rocking by itself, and Scott admits he cannot explain the footage, but insists he wants to find a scientific explanation for the paranormal. That night, Liam makes a video call to his family, reading a bedtime story to his children as they share a heartfelt moment. As everyone prepares to sleep, Liam goes to switch off the generator, while Holly, still reading the séance book, decides to check the camera sensor in her room. In the middle of the night, Scott's laptop suddenly turns on, revealing a figure moving in one of the rooms. The hallway camera detects motion, followed by the sound of footsteps and the lights beginning to shake. The following morning, Liam checks the laptop and discovers that their motion sensor in the hallway was triggered at 3 a.m., which he finds unusual. When he tells Scott, Scott dismisses it as nothing more than a draft and once again attempts to provide a scientific explanation. With their equipment ready, the crew begins trying to make contact with any ghosts in the house, asking for a sign, with Holly leading the session. However, she receives no response and suggests that they try another room. However, the same outcome occurs in the next room, leaving the crew frustrated, especially Scott, who believes they are simply wasting their time. As Liam and Scott discuss their previous investigations, Scott explains that if entities truly exist, they must be made of matter, otherwise, they could not be seen. He goes on to describe his theory that low-frequency sound can disperse a ghost. Later, Liam checks the hallway sensors to ensure they are functioning properly, and the crew goes to bed. Unable to sleep that night, Liam heads to the control room and plays back the recording from earlier, when Holly was attempting to contact any entity in the house. As he listens closely, he begins to hear another voice in the background, and suddenly, the entire house shakes, waking the others. The crew discovers that the house shakes at exactly 3 a.m., the same time the hallway motion sensor was triggered the previous night. To their shock, they also find the front door standing wide open, and as they go outside to investigate, brief supernatural activity takes place inside the house. After finding nothing outside, the crew return back to their rooms, and suddenly, the front door suddenly swings open by itself. The next day, during a phone call with the insurance company, Scott explains that they still have not found enough evidence to prove the house is haunted. He says they have only encountered wind and noisy floorboards and requests a couple more days to continue the investigation. While reviewing the footage from the previous night, Scott asks Holly to take photographs of the house's interior and instructs Liam to double-check all the cameras to eliminate any possibility of equipment error. Armed with an EMF meter, Scott searches the house from room to room, attempting to detect any paranormal activity, but finds nothing. Likewise, Holly discovers nothing unusual in the photographs she takes of the interior. Later, during a snack break, the crew chats, and Holly, who is more shaken than the others, reveals that she took the job to conquer her fear of ghosts. Before going to bed, the crew sets their alarms to wake them before 3 a.m., the time when the supernatural events have been occurring. At 2:45 a.m., they prepare their equipment and wait in the hallway. Exactly at 3 a.m., the house suddenly shakes again, and the front door swings open. At that moment, Holly senses the presence of a tall man, although neither Scott nor Liam can see him. She points out the direction where she believes the figure is standing, but Scott's EMF meter detects no electromagnetic disturbance, making it difficult for him to believe her. He tells Holly that she cannot make vague observations and expect him to accept them as evidence, which angers her. The next day, while reviewing the footage from the previous night, Scott insists that the wind caused the front door to open, frustrating both Liam and Holly, even though he witnessed the events himself. Scott argues that no one will accept their evidence because it is too subjective and that they need something more concrete to prove the existence of the supernatural. Holly suggests that they should leave because the ghost does not want them in the house. However, Scott reassures them that there is no evidence that a ghost has ever harmed a living person and says that, at most, it can only frighten them. Despite their frustration, Liam and Holly eventually agree to continue the investigation. The three proceed from room to room, attempting to establish contact with the entity. Holly tries to provoke a response by knocking on a wall, but nothing happens, and moments later, she senses a presence and a sudden drop in temperature, something neither Scott nor Liam experiences. She tells them that she can see a mist and describes what she is feeling, but Scott believes she is imagining it. Scott's EMF meter still shows no readings, but he soon realizes that he forgot to insert the battery. After inserting it, the meter immediately begins registering a significant electromagnetic disturbance. The reading abruptly stops at the end of the main hallway, and Holly confirms that there is no presence in the kitchen. Just then, the crew is startled by a strange noise. To determine whether it is the ghost, Holly asks the entity to make the sound again, and it immediately does. Convinced that the entity can physically interact with its surroundings, the crew fills the hallway with fog that night in hopes of capturing a visual manifestation. At exactly 3 a.m., the house shakes once again, and the front door suddenly swings open, and the crew briefly sees a shadowy figure before it disappears. Later that night, while everyone is asleep, the cameras capture the front door opening again. Liam wakes to find the lights shaking, and moments later, he and Scott are startled by Holly's scream as she cries out that the giant man is inside her room. Scott quickly helps her out of bed before she can be harmed, and the ghost continues making its presence known, even throwing the camera mounted on the wall. The following day, while Scott is speaking with the insurance company about the previous night's events, the house suddenly shakes again. They discover that the front door is wide open, and shaken by the experience, Liam decides it is time to leave, believing that the ghost does not want them in the house. Holly agrees with him. However, Scott refuses to give up now that the ghost is beginning to manifest itself. He argues that the entity is only trying to frighten them, as it has never physically harmed anyone. Determined to capture undeniable paranormal evidence, he insists they stay for just one more night, and Liam, who owns their only means of transportation, reluctantly agrees. That night during a windstorm, the crew gathers in the kitchen, drinking hot chocolate and chatting. Suddenly, Holly and Scott notice something unusual in the window, and without warning, the window shatters in front of them, followed by a series of strange noises. The crew immediately senses the ghost's presence as it launches a telekinetic attack, hurling furniture at them and causing widespread destruction throughout the house. With the ghost relentlessly pursuing them, they take refuge in a nearby room. After touching the doorway, Holly tells the others that something inside the room is preventing the ghost from entering. They soon realize that the entity has begun smashing the cameras they had placed throughout the house. Later, Liam insists that they leave immediately for their own safety, saying he no longer cares whether the insurance company believes their story. However, Scott refuses to leave, he insists that he wants to get rid of the ghost using sound displacement. Liam thinks the idea is insane, but Holly also wants the ghost removed. Although she does not agree with Scott's scientific method, she supports the attempt, and with no other choice, Liam reluctantly agrees to help. Sensing that the ghost is no longer nearby, with Holly watching for any sign of its return, the crew quickly rushes outside to retrieve their equipment. The crew successfully retrieves their equipment and rushes back to the room where the ghost is unable to enter. As they begin setting everything up, the generator suddenly runs out of fuel, plunging the house into complete darkness. Nevertheless, the setback does not stop them, and despite the ongoing supernatural disturbances, Liam manages to restart the generator while Scott prepares his equipment. As the machine reaches its lowest frequency, the ghost suddenly disappears from the house, and Holly confirms that the entity has vanished. The following day, relieved that they have succeeded, the ghost hunters begin packing their equipment to leave. Before they depart, Liam notices an unusually cold section of the kitchen wall. He alerts the others, and together they break through it, uncovering a hidden passage leading to a secret basement. The trio enters the cellar to investigate and discovers bones scattered across the floor, the same basement seen at the beginning of the movie. To their horror, they find the mummified corpse of a woman chained to a chair. Overwhelmed by a powerful paranormal presence, Holly struggles to breathe and is forced to leave the basement. Back upstairs, Holly concludes that the tall man had left the woman chained there to die, and the group immediately calls the police. 2 police officers arrive to investigate, but when they inspect the basement, the woman's body has mysteriously vanished. As the ghost hunters try to convince the officers that they are telling the truth, the house suddenly begins to shake once again. Holly is suddenly possessed and reveals that the first ghost had been trying to scare them away from the house. The real danger, she says, is the woman. Moments later, the woman's ghost violently kills the 2 police officers by hurling them into a wall, before doing the same to Scott. Liam and Holly attempt to escape, but the ghost drags Holly into the kitchen. Just before she is pulled into the basement, Liam manages to save her. Instead, he is dragged into the basement and killed. Holly escapes outside, but a hand suddenly emerges from beneath the lawn and pulls her underground. Back in the basement, she desperately searches for a way out when a chain suddenly wraps around her neck and drags her into the darkness. The movie concludes as the killer ghost finally reveals itself, crawling rapidly toward the camera. Okay guys, that's all the recap about The Dead Room from 2015. Thanks for watching, see you again in the next video.